America, we are quick to point out flaws, but what is our elixir for moving toward a more perfect union and forever saying, I am proud to be an American? Hi, I'm Peyton Luke, and this is First Liberty Live. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you so much for your support of our content and our media. You truly make it possible for us to continue to bring this content and get the word out regarding First Liberty and defending religious freedom in our nation. So today I have Tim Goeglein with us, and Tim is the Vice President of Government and External Relations with Focus on the Family, and recently he published a book called Toward a More Perfect Union. So Tim, welcome to First Liberty Live.
Thank you, Peyton. It is great to be with you. It's a great honor.
Well, we're excited to have you with us today and to talk about your book, because I feel like it is just so impactful with where our country is right now. So I will ask, what inspired you to start writing this, and how did the outline start to form in your head, and what was that beginning process like?
Well, two things. My favorite historian is David McCullough, and I had the honor and pleasure of meeting him many years ago when I worked for George W. Bush in the White House. And in one of my conversations, I asked David, what is it that concerns you most as a historian? And he said, I am deeply concerned that the rising generation of young Americans do not know the American story. Just on the basic, principle facts that you and I might say, oh, we thought everybody knew that. At that point, he had done a lot of writing and a lot of traveling and was very concerned. And of course, as one of the vice presidents at Focus on the Family, though I'm based here in Washington, I travel a lot, about a third of the time. And Peyton, almost with pinpoint accuracy, whether I'm in the north or the south, the east, the west, it doesn't matter. I can be in the dead center of the country. After I speak and open it up for questions, comments, concerns, almost with pinpoint accuracy, regardless of the audience, people will say something like the following. First, I've never been more concerned about my country than I am now. Secondly, if they have children or grandchildren, they will say, and I'm really concerned about this rising generation. And then thirdly, they will say, and I don't know what to do. And so after all of these years of hearing, these concerns, I decided to delve in to the empirical research and to really understand this era of disinformation and propaganda, the frontal assault on facts, the frontal assault on our American history, on culture, on civilization. I mean, this is the most extraordinary country in the history of mankind. Why is it that the rising generation of young Americans in very large numbers do not know even the basics? And what I found overwhelmingly is that this has been deliberate. And I write about that at length in the book. There have been major and prominent historians who don't like America. They don't like the American story. It makes them uncomfortable. And they have worked overtime, and I might say, unfortunately, successfully, to impact young Americans to the point where large numbers of Americans don't know basic things like who was our first president? What is the United States Constitution? What is the Declaration of Independence? When was World War II? Can you have a free society for all the years ahead if you are taking an entire generation of Americans and utterly confusing them about their own country?
Mm-hmm. In your book, there was a really interesting story about your friend Craig, and how when he was growing up and young, he went to one of the Macy's stores and he saw a book regarding the presidents of the United States. And he was so excited. So he went and asked for that and wanted that for Christmas, even when other kids wanted other things. And then when he got older and went to school, he realized that they weren't teaching the same things anymore. And I highlighted an area from your book, and the line reads, "The history and heritage Craig was previously taught to be proud of was now depicting something to be ashamed of. Instead of singing, 'My country, 'tis of thee,' he said he and his classmates were now singing, 'If I had a hammer.'"
Yes. Yes, yes, that's an actual story, and the damage of the moral and social revolution of the 1960s, 70s, and early 80s. We're living with the contrails of those seeds of destruction and degeneration. And may I say, it is very concerning. And I'd like to use just two examples, if I may, Peyton, in light of what you've just shared from the book. The first one is when you look at the empirical data, everyone's entitled to his own opinions. Not everyone's entitled to his own facts. So the question is, what do young Americans know? And I delved into a large a survey of public high school students who were given the test that legal immigrants are given when they become citizens. So these are the kind of bottom line questions that you and I would say, these are the elemental building blocks of understanding American history. And this large survey of public high school students showed that only 1 in 4 could name George Washington as the first president of the United States. Barely 10%. I mean, that is shocking. Under 30% knew that there are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, and less than 30%, less than 3 in 10 knew that the President of the United States of America heads the executive branch. So, we have to understand what's going on. And I didn't want to ring fire bells in the night, to quote Thomas Jefferson, because I'm not an alarmist. In fact, I'm an inveterate optimist. And I wanted to use the first third of the book to say, where are we? What are the problems? And then 2/3 to say, and what can we do about it? Because I think that's very important. And I wanted to share with the reader some of the people who have been most responsible for this willful, purposeful destruction. One particularly infamous so-called historian, who is the most widely published, most widely read historian in American schools, Howard Zinn. He worked overtime to erase our American memory and story. The 1619 Project, I know you're well aware of that somehow falsely America begins our nation in 1619 when the slave ships came to the coastlands of Virginia. This kind of propaganda and misinformation has been spread around for a long time, and it's very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And recently, our very own Mike Berry wrote an opinion piece in the Daily Caller. It was kind of like a mini book report, and he praises you for going through it. And one of his lines was, Goeglein makes a compelling case that America cannot hope to prevent wars, save the planet, or cure cancer if we continue our present course of vilifying and ostracizing those who we once hailed as heroes.
Yes, and I really appreciated that review by First Liberty's Mike Berry. That was really a beautiful review, and I'm very grateful for it. And to his point, if I may, it's one thing for you and I, Peyton, to have this wonderful dialogue and say, these are the statistics, these are the data. But we have to say, what does it actually mean? I mean, when you apply this in everyday American life, what does this actually mean? What has it resulted in? Here's what it's resulted in. In real time, we are watching some of the greatest figures of American history be erased. One of them is the founder of California, a very important Christian, Father Sarah. There are millions of Californians who don't even know the history and how their own state, came into being. George Washington himself, he's a prominent figure in the book, being erased. Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison. I was speaking at a large university just a couple of years ago, and after I spoke, I had a number of students come up to the place where I had been speaking, and I'm paraphrasing here, but they said, we are so pleased to learn about this man, Winston Churchill. We've never heard of him. What a remarkable life. And I must tell you, I was stunned that large numbers of otherwise young, bright, smart people really were clueless when it came to a towering figure of the 20th century, Winston Churchill, where where the Allies would not have been victorious without the centrality of Churchill. So I think we are very late and deep in this wokeism and cancel culture. And it's one of the principal reasons that I wanted to write Toward a More Perfect Union, a phrase, of course, taken from the preamble to our Constitution. It is not a rah-rah book. As you know from reading it, we are very comfortable saying there are chapters of American history that are not the best of us. And we have to deal with those. It's very important. Every great nation, truly great nation, has to deal with its flaws and its sins. Nothing wrong with that. But that also does not mean that we do not say, but in balance and over against everything else, you have to conclude that of all the nations, of all of mankind, the United States has been objectively one of the greatest countries for good that there ever was. I mean, it's really worthy of that great phrase, "Sweet Land of Liberty." It's an incredible country, and principally because of the genius of our founders and the drafting of the Constitution, which has to be central in any American history. And unfortunately, it's very often totally vilified with so many of those misinformed so-called histories that have done so much damage.
And what I appreciate about your approach in the book is that you talk about some of these, past wrongs, but they're not as a weapon, and you urge them to be a tool for us to better ourselves for the future so that way we can avoid these mistakes. So how do you suggest we move forward?
Well, I believe, Peyton, very strongly, and I say this in the concluding chapters of Toward a More Perfect Union, that the battle for the soul of our nation, I believe, begins in our homes. Because it cannot begin in Silicon Valley. It cannot begin on Wall Street. It will not begin here in Washington. It will not begin in Hollywood. It has to begin in the places that are most local to us. One of my favorite writers, G.K. Chesterton, he said every neighborhood should have a banner. I love that. We're all from someplace, and whether you are from a farm in a rural community or on the Upper West Side of New York, it has to begin the transformation toward restoration and regeneration and renewal of American history and civics. Has to begin in our homes. And then from there to our schools, our churches, our parishes, our neighborhoods. And we have a country to save. We are in a very perilous time. I mean, not since the Civil War have we been this divided. And so I think, Peyton, we have to ask our question, this question, if we may, in light of your question. I think we have to ask ourselves, what kind of a country do we want 50 years from now? What kind of a country do we want 100 years from now? And then I think we have to put the building blocks in place. And it begins with the American story. It begins with the United States Constitution. We have to go tell a new generation, because we cannot assume that they know the basic building blocks of the story of liberty, our religious liberty, our conscience rights, the great work of First Liberty Institute. We focus on the family love, FLI. Religious liberty is a very substantial part of what we're talking about here, because so often religious liberty and conscience rights have been savagely attacked and frontally assaulted. And religious liberty is one of the golden narratives, not only of the American story and American experience, but of the Constitution itself.
And I think you're so right in saying how it starts in the family. It starts in our homes and in our schools. And you and Focus on the Family do such a good job of doing that and communicating to the family and teaching the parents and creating programs that the kids can listen to from a young age that's true to our history and true to the heart of America. So I do just want to say, thank you for the work that you continue to do there as well. And of course, I have to ask, because, we are a law firm and we have a case going before the Supreme Court and everything. So one of the titles of one of your chapters in the book is The Perils of Constitutional Ignorance. So how do we guard against constitutional ignorance within our schools?
I'm thrilled you asked that question, because I have one purpose in that chapter, and it's the easiest thing in the world. It's to encourage this generation to read the Constitution. I am literally thrilled you asked this question because in all of the places that I speak, and I speak to a lot of young people, I always ask, how many of you have actually read the Constitution of the United States? How many of you have read the Declaration of Independence? Now, I'm in an audience, and so it's not scientifically based, but almost always people will raise their hands in very low numbers. And in fact, I was just speaking in a program 2 weeks ago, and I would say less than 20%.
Wow, which is absolutely crazy to me, that so few people truly have that background or that understanding, because so much it comes from reading it and absorbing it for ourselves versus just taking in what the media is telling us.
May I say exactly, and it's funny you would say this because I was just at a dinner gathering 2 nights ago with a number of young people, all of whom are in their late teens, and none of them had ever read the Constitution. And I asked one of the young women there, I know you've not read it. How long do you think it is? And she said it must take a lot of time. And I said, actually, it's a very short, fleet document that is purposely designed to be easily understood and grasped. Because as I said to her, the Constitution is relatively short. It's very well written, and its words have a fixed meaning. Its words do not change and shift over time. And that is by design. The whole purpose of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the amendments is to be crystalline, and that the average citizen can read, absorb, and understand the Constitution. It's one of the greatest reasons that our Constitution has lasted as long as it has, because it is very user-friendly, and it's applied, of course, to one of the greatest nations in the history of mankind. So I feel very confident that the shortest answer is, why don't we have a national effort beginning in our homes to have every young person read the United States Constitution? What a terrific project that is.
Yeah. And of course, now I have to ask, what was your favorite part of the book, and what part got you the most excited when you were researching it? Like, I can't wait for this to be in the hands of the public, for them truly to absorb it and read it.
I am a bottomless optimist. I'm an inveterate optimist. And despite the overwhelming difficulties that we see, I think we are living at a very perilous time. That despite the difficulties and challenges we face, I say and conclude in toward a more perfect union that the best days of America are ahead of us. That's what I believe. I believe that regeneration and renewal and restoration is possible. And there are plenty of examples, not only in the lives of other great nations, but in the lives of the United States of America. It was not a foregone conclusion that the Patriots would win the revolution. It was not a foregone conclusion that the country would survive after the Civil War. I mentioned the era of civil rights earlier, the pro-life era that we are in, which is a remarkable civil rights era, and the overturning of Roe against Wade. In another era, the overturning of Dred Scott. It is remarkable in the American experience that renewal seems to occur when you least expect it. And when you're in the middle of the kind of destructive elements and destruction that we're watching, Peyton, very often concurrent to those periods of destruction, there are seedlings of renewal which are being put down that can lead us toward restoration. And I see all kinds of seedlings of restoration and hope. And one of them is that I think we are living through an era of parental rebellion. I think parents have woken up. They've looked at the impact of wokeism, cancel culture, erasure culture, and they're saying, wow, I didn't realize who is on our school board, who is deciding the curriculum in our schools? And I could go on and on. I think there are all kinds of things happening in this era of American history that are very worth watching, because I think they embody the possibility of something better just ahead.
I love that. I love your focus on the optimism and the hope for the future, because it's so easy to get bogged down in the negativity of what we see on the news or the circumstances that are happening in classrooms nowadays. But anyway, I love that your focus is on the optimism and the hope, because it's so true, and America's best days are in front of it. So Toward a More Perfect Union is definitely a must read for all Americans who want the best for her. And thank you so much for writing it and getting this in the hands of the public. So where can people find your work, find your book? What is it that you want to tell the people of where they can get your content?
Sure. Of course, many people who buy books go to Amazon, and the book is there, of course. I like faithfultext.com. I like faithfultext.com because it's reliable. It's truly gritty, and they've done a good job. So I think faithfultext.com, Amazon. The book is easily gettable, and I hope people will buy it, read it, enjoy it, and above all, use it as a tool in their toolbox, because we really, I think, are living in a time where the themes of Toward a More Perfect Union will give us the chance of the moral and cultural restoration that we seek. And I hope people really enjoy the book.
For sure. And Tim, is there anything else that you would like to add before I let you go?
Well, I'd be happy to say one thing which I think is worth saying, and it's the following. Parents and local communities, churches, parishes, neighborhoods, which I mentioned earlier, I think very often they have been overlooked as the kind of catalyzing effect that can lead us toward a better time. I think so often we've kind of been propagandized that it has to be the public schools, it has to be government, it has to be the Fortune 500, it has to be institutions. And of course, I believe in strong institutions. Of course, I do. But I believe very often we underestimate the powers of moms and dads. We underestimate the powers of grandmothers and grandfathers, aunts and uncles, and those in our immediate circle of family and community and church who can have such an incredible impact on the next generation. I know that in our own family, we have many veterans, and yet there are so many young people in America who have never met a veteran. They simply have perhaps learned about or heard about things like World War II or Vietnam or the Gulf War, or Afghanistan and Iraq, but they've never really met someone who has been there. And it seems to me that one of the best ways to create an interest in culture and history is for veterans to step up and to meet the next generation and just be authentic and share what your experience was and why America is worth defending. A strong patriotic citizenry is what we're seeking here, and I think we're already seeing it, and I think that's the kind of goal that will serve the country very well in the years ahead.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for such a great book that's going to help us just have hope for the future and continue to move toward a more perfect union. So thank you.
Peyton, thank you so much, and to everybody at First Liberty Institute, really, really appreciative.
Yes, well,
God
thank
bless.
you. God bless you too. So if this message resonated with you, you can support the work of First Liberty and restoring faith in America by going to firstlibertylive.com. There's the big red give button if you would like to continue to support us in creating this content. And First Liberty is your last line of defense and your greatest hope for victory.